This was one of the most incredibly strange problems I've done so far. So since starting Ruby, I've sort of spent a lot of time on Code Wars doing coding challenges. I'm used to being given something that is just, here's the input, we want X output, figure out the data structure, figure out the methods I need to do, and that's it, done. So the actual question for this one is just to print out this exact file here. So it's just the 12 Days of Christmas song. There's one test for the entire thing, and all it does is check that you've printed out this exact text file here. So easy, done, just print it, you're done, right? You can actually pass the test if you do that. So this one isn't really a can you brute force your way through the test challenge, which is sort of what I usually do and then go back and refactor something. This is sort of an entirely refactor your code to get to whatever point you think is nice and readable, works quickly, that sort of thing. So I sort of went through it quite a few times before I got to an answer that I was actually happy with. I started off doing it with an array of hashes as the sort of days of Christmas and the gifts that are given. I went back, did it as a constant that was just a hash. I knew sort of at the start that the most important thing I needed to keep consistent throughout the entire problem was just this base constant here. So this was sort of the first thing that I defined. So it's just on the %s was something that I hadn't actually used before. So that actually just relates to down here. So that works as like a placeholder for a symbol in the hash. So that will automatically check what day it is here, and then put that there for the specific day that you're up to. So that was a new one. Hadn't actually used that before. Was quite helpful in this, so I didn't have to sort of do more work just to do that sort of really, really basic step. So first thing it does is just print out that line. That's first line on every single line that you need to print. So I did that. Next thing was the constant for this. So basically this is the data that you need to repeat. So the days are only done once, nice and easy, as I said, to get out of the way. The sort of bulk of the problem is the, I guess, most efficient way to give these values in the hash over and over again. And basically once you've used one, you need to continue using it over and over again for every line of the problem. I had a few odd problems. One was actually this little and here. When I was doing this problem, basically, if you look at the song, the and appears only on the second line and then not on the first line. So before I actually thought about the fact that all I needed to do was put it at the end of the second, I was trying to figure out a way for the program to actually sort of read where to put the and I spent a lot of time sort of trying to figure out how can I do this with regex and figure it out and put it in there before I actually realized all I needed to do was just put it as a part of the string here on the second. The other sort of weird thing was just putting the new lines in. So you can just do that on the first day, because the first day again is always the one that's just at the end. One of the weird things that this was strict about was the exact formatting of the song. So the new line is actually important to get that formatting right. Another thing to do with the formatting was a funny little chomp here that I had to add. So if you don't have this chomp right here, test actually fails because there'll be a new line down here. And it won't actually like it to have extra new lines for some reason when it runs the test. So you need that before it fails. So to the actual methods of the song, what I actually did was do a map. So it's a hash, really, really easy to sort of iterate through with a key and a value. I did actually most of the sort of putting together of the song in a little helper method that I did down here. So this, I did sort of some little examples of how it works here. So if you only run this helper method and you run it with, I've just put in the arguments here, just so you can sort of get a better example of a day and what the gifts would be. So if you just run it how it is now, it will just run this little helper method here, and that's just with the first day and the first gift. So what it gives you is exactly what you would need for the first line. So that's nice and easy to sort of start the problem. And then if you do the same thing with the second one, you'll get this, which is just the second line. So this little helper method actually does the majority of the problem because it uses the base constant and it puts the days and gifts together for that particular day. Then the rest of the problem is basically just done in this little area here, which is in the main song method. And that will basically just figure out what additional days need to be put into the actual string when it prints out. So another weird thing that I'd never used before is prepend. I spent a long time sort of figuring out how to get this to work properly. And prepend was a thing that I found. Incredibly weird method I found on, I think, on some weird Stack Overflow question. I've never seen it used before. I still don't exactly understand how it works, but just like Nathan's, it works. I spent a bit of time trying to understand it, but even if you go into the Ruby documentation, there's basically a one-line description of it, and it doesn't even really help to explain it there. So if anyone really understands prepend well, please tell me at the end and sort of explain that a bit better to me, how it works and why it works here. But yeah, once you sort of put it all together, you put the helper method in here and pass it the arguments that you've given it. So the prepended gifts adds those extra days, and the day obviously works really, really simply, just the key. And at the end, just join and chop off the new line. And yeah, it basically, I'll run the whole thing. So if you just do the whole thing, it prints out a bit hideously in my terminal, sorry. But it prints the whole song how you'd want. And I guess I'll run the test for you, even though there is only one, and passes the test. That is it.
Awesome.
Nice work, Finn. I can see it scales well. Even if we had 500 days of Christmas, easy peasy to add those in, not a problem.
Yeah. So I sort of tried to make it something. I haven't really learnt the sort of all the, I think it's the big O notation stuff where you can sort of see complexity and time and everything. I know there's like a sort of thing that you can write up in Ruby that I've seen. I forget the name of it, sort of test how long your program takes to run. I'd like to do that in the future with some kind of refactoring work like this. But I sort of tried to make it work the most efficient I thought it could be.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think you can use benchmark for that.
Benchmark, that's it. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's I really like hearing people do these exercisms when they go, I didn't know this was a thing, and I didn't know that was a thing, and so yeah. It's really nice. So for prepend, I was under the impression it was just attaching a word on the start of another word, isn't it? Isn't that the string on the start of another string?
So I sort of thought it worked like that, but from what I've read, it seems like it has extra functionality inside the class. Because initially I used include and a few other methods to try and make it so that obviously with the days you have to count backwards through them. So I used reverse join and include at one point, and then found the answer just saying to use prepend. But yeah, I was confused about just how little there was in the documentation about prepend that I could find.
Did you try submitting your solution?
No, so I did actually start, when I got this problem, started using Exercism. I went through a few of them, but at the time I was doing Hacktoberfest and had a bit of other work. So to get up to where you need to submit it, you have to sort of go through them one by one. And I didn't really have time to sort of submit each problem one by one before I did this. So I sort of jumped the gun and just went into practice mode and jumped to this one. But after hearing you guys talk about it, I might start actually doing that, working through them, because it seems like it'd be a bit handy, yeah.
Yeah, you can still submit if you're on practice mode and not on mentor mode.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter which one. The only difference is that mentor mode, well, obviously people will actually come and have a look.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one, I don't know if it flags it as just something to have a look at. But
yeah, because in practice it said you won't get the mentor feedback if you submit it.
Yeah, but I think you can swap back at any time as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But,
right. I might do that then. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Just a quick observation. It's interesting the one that you said about the percent sign between your base and day on line 26. Actually, that's where I worked out how to do that by doing Ruby in Exercism, and somebody pointed out, why don't you use the format operator? So there is a more verbose version of that, which is called format. It's basically the same thing. The base %day will format the values within the %s, or whatever, %s for string, etc. But there is there is an extension of that, which is basically to call the function format and pass it the string. The other thing you can do, as you've got line 2, you've got your %s, you can actually do a percentage, and then in like HTML braces, like less than, greater than, you can name the variable in there. So you can actually, so especially if you had like multiple strings, you could then say, % less than string 1 greater than s, and then you can actually refer to them.
Wow, okay.
Post an example on that in the chat or the meetup, wherever's best.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
And then the other thing that's also sometimes worth doing is, I don't know if you guys are across Rubocop. If you actually Rubocopped this file, which would kind of apply a certain formatting style, it would actually change that line 26 to use the more explicit format operator.
Right. Okay. No, I haven't used Rubocop before, but I will look into that.
Cool. Thanks, Michael. Has anyone else got any questions?
How many iterations did you need before you got a solution that you were happy with?
A lot. I think I did maybe 5 or 6, so not that many. But that's 5 or 6 of changing quite a few different things. I played around a lot between, I think in all of them, I did some form of map. And I think I had 3 methods at one point. I had 1 method at one point. This iteration that I did here was actually one really big method at one point, but it just sort of became a mess. And then I sort of went back to reverting into a few. But yeah, most of it was about getting this data structure right, because I played around with 3 or 4 versions of the actual data structure before I got to this one, which seemed like the sort of best for what I wanted to do. Yeah.
That sounds totally normal to me.
Yep.
Get it working first, and then get it looking pretty later.
Yep, that's it. Get it right, get it fast.
And the final request is that you sing the song. No, I'm kidding. Thanks, Finn. That's great.
Cheers, thank you.